Edward, a New York resident battling neurofibromatosis, dreams of making it as an actor. So far, his only role has been a small part in an educational film aimed at promoting kindness toward people with distinctive appearances. Unfortunately, the director isn't impressed with his performance, leaving Edward feeling defeated as he heads home. On the subway, he feels the weight of strangers' gazes, convinced that people can't help but stare at his face. His discomfort intensifies when a fellow passenger starts acting rudely, bothering others in the car. Amidst the commotion, a man unexpectedly hands Edward a business card, mentioning he's searching for individuals with unique looks for a film. Strangely, he doesn't seem to notice Edward's distinctive features at all. Upon reaching his apartment, Edward notices a new neighbor moving in next door, a striking young woman. Once inside, he discovers a leak in his ceiling. He places a bowl underneath to catch the dripping water before attending to his usual chores. Just as he's handling a knife, a sudden knock at the door startles him, causing him to cut his finger. At the door stands his new neighbor, Ingrid. Seeing the blood, she instinctively rushes to get a first aid kit. Unlike Edward, who is reserved and uncomfortable in social situations, Ingrid is confident and direct. She peppers him with questions, but he only responds with hesitant grunts. As she surveys his apartment, she notices a photograph of a young boy with a woman. When Edward confirms it's his mother, Ingrid realizes his condition wasn't something he was born with. Her curiosity extends to his profession, but before he can answer, she spots a typewriter and assumes he's a writer. Edward corrects her, explaining that he simply found it discarded on the street. However, when she reads a few lines he had typed, she finds them deeply moving. Revealing that she's an aspiring playwright, Ingrid enthusiastically suggests they could achieve fame together. Incidentally, her initial reason for visiting was to borrow some laundry detergent. The following day, Edward visits his doctor, who warns him that his tumor growth may soon impact his vision. There's an opportunity to join a clinical trial for an experimental drug, a treatment that, though untested, might cure his condition and completely alter his life. Returning home, Edward notices something unexpected. His front door has been freshly painted. A trail of paint leading to Ingrid's apartment makes it clear who was responsible. Inside, however, his ceiling leak has worsened, with the hole growing even larger. Resigned, he places a bucket under the drip. Then, deciding to show appreciation, he takes the typewriter over to Ingrid's apartment as a housewarming gift. After expressing her gratitude, she is interrupted by her boyfriend's arrival, prompting Edward to leave. The following day, Edward auditions for a role, passionately delivering Sio's monologue. However, despite pouring his heart into the performance, the producers remain unimpressed. Feeling disheartened, he leaves. That evening, Edward shares a social ad with Ingrid, one in which he had previously appeared. The short clip highlights the significance of embracing people with unique appearances in both society and workplaces. It emphasizes that while our brains instinctively judge based on first impressions, it's crucial to take a second look. Ingrid, however, isn't particularly moved. Instead, she unexpectedly suggests treating the skin on Edward's nose. But since no one aside from doctors has ever touched his face, the mere thought makes him uneasy, and she quickly drops the idea. Determined, Edward proceeds with an experimental treatment at the clinic. As he lies on a specialized table, machines scan his face, analyzing the tumors. A newly developed drug is injected under his skin to monitor changes, and a mold of his face is created. He is also given a journal to document any progress. The doctor, noticing his bandaged finger, redresses the wound. On his way home, Edward observes happy couples enjoying their evening strolls. His attention is suddenly drawn to a newly placed statue of Lincoln. He stands there for a long time, staring at it. As he eventually walks away, it almost feels as if the statue is watching him in return. That night, he finds a gift bag outside his door containing laundry detergent, face cream, and candies. Along with it is a note from Ingrid thanking him for his kindness. Settling on his couch, he opens the candies but soon starts coughing. Removing the damp bandage from his hand, he is shocked to discover that his previously wounded finger has completely healed. Just then, part of his ceiling collapses and a dead rat falls into the bucket below. Later that night, loud knocking and urgent voices wake Edward. Rescuers have come to retrieve his neighbor, who has sadly passed away. Moved by the situation, Edward decides to adopt the deceased man's cat. From his window, he watches as the young and handsome man's body is carried away. The next day, Edward and Ingrid meet for dinner at a cafe. She asks him several questions, especially urging him never to speak of harming himself. Their conversation eventually shifts to their love for plays. Suddenly, someone outside taps on the window and waves at Edward, much to Ingrid's surprise. Before parting ways, she makes a bold declaration. He will be the star of the play she is writing. That night, the heavy rain worsens the leak in Edward's ceiling. As he inspects the damage, a chunk of plaster falls, injuring his face. When he wipes away the blood, he unintentionally peels off a piece of skin from his forehead and cheek. The following morning, Edward returns to the doctor, who is astonished by his condition. Edward himself is alarmed, but the doctor reassures him. The healing process involves shedding diseased cells and replacing them with healthy ones. He provides Edward with a mask to help monitor his transformation. As the day goes on, Edward starts feeling unwell but experiences something unexpected, a rare moment of recognition. Someone from the social ad acknowledges him. At a cafe, the bartender greets him warmly, and another customer recognizes him as well. That night, overwhelmed with emotion, Edward breaks down in tears. But suddenly, in a moment of impulsive curiosity, he pulls at his skin, revealing a handsome face underneath. For the first time, he stares at his reflection, unable to believe what he sees. As he takes in his transformation, he even manages to whistle, a simple act that had once been impossible due to his lip deformity. Shortly after, Edward finds himself in a bar, drinking with strangers. He meets a woman, and the night takes an unexpected turn, ending in the restroom, signaling the beginning of a new chapter in his life. The next morning, Edward's doctor visits, concerned about his absence from follow-ups. Thinking quickly, Edward fabricates a story claiming the previous tenant has passed away. Reinventing himself, he takes on the identity of Guy Moratz and dismisses the doctor, unaware that Ingrid has overheard their conversation. Moving into a more upscale apartment, Edward, now Guy, embraces his new life, dating different women. Over time, he becomes a successful and wealthy real estate agent. Yet, beneath the polished exterior, he remains the same insecure man. One day, he spots Ingrid on the street and follows her, discovering that she is directing a play on a small Broadway stage, titled Edward. As he steps inside and listens, it becomes clear that the play is based on his own life. By chance, he catches the attention of the casting team auditioning for the role of Edward. However, his performance fails to leave an impression. Determined, he returns later, this time wearing his mask. Ingrid is taken aback by his transformed presence, but Guy, now fully embodying the role, delivers a captivating performance, earning him the part. Later, he fabricates another lie, telling Ingrid that his childhood friend had a similar condition but has since passed away. The memory, he claims, overwhelmed him during his first audition. Ingrid, however, remains indifferent to his advances, while Edward feels lost amidst the bustling theater. Meanwhile, Ingrid is delighted to have finally found an actor who can bring her vision to life. One evening, Ingrid invites Edward to her apartment. He notices familiar objects, his old typewriter and his late neighbor's cat, but chooses not to acknowledge them. She offers him a drink and asks him to dance. They spend the night together. As rehearsals progress, Edward delivers an outstanding performance, as though voicing his own thoughts. Then, one day, a man named Oswald, who also suffers from neurofibromatosis, visits the theater and takes an interest in the production. Charismatic and confident, Oswald admires Edward's acting. That night, Ingrid unexpectedly asks Edward to put on his mask. When he obliges, she bursts into laughter, finding it so exaggerated that it becomes amusing. Later, Edward spends an evening at a bar with his real estate colleagues when Oswald unexpectedly calls out to him, praising his talent and calling him a future star. The group is stunned, but Oswald's charm quickly wins them over. Once again, he compliments Guy's acting. At the next rehearsal, Edward challenges Ingrid's interpretation of the protagonist, leading to a heated debate. He resents the fact that she relies on emotions she has never truly experienced. Meanwhile, Oswald integrates himself effortlessly into the cast, his sociability and confidence making him a favorite among them. Even Ingrid is drawn to him as they bond over shared literary interests. When she invites him to stay for the rehearsal, he accepts without hesitation. Later that night, the cast gathers at a bar where Edward sits quietly, watching as Ingrid and Oswald animatedly discuss the play's themes. Oswald questions whether the protagonist would truly choose to give up on life, convinced that people like him have an inherent love for living. Though Edward joins in the laughter, deep inside, frustration lingers. Oswald, always the entertainer, delights the group with stories and even picks up the skill of whistling. That night, Edward wakes to find Ingrid revising the play. Oswald had been right all along. Edward's character was too dull and melancholic, stuck in an all-too-predictable arc. Annoyed, Edward remembers how Ingrid dismissed his concerns earlier, yet now, after Oswald voiced a similar opinion, she is eager to make changes. The disagreement soon escalates into a heated argument. At the next rehearsal, Edward struggles to maintain his composure, but his frustration seeps through. Losing control, he storms out. As he wanders through the park, he spots Oswald enjoying himself, practicing yoga among a lively group, admiring a statue of Lincoln. Later, at a karaoke bar, Oswald's rich voice mesmerizes the crowd. Edward watches in disbelief as the audience showers Oswald with admiration, completely indifferent to his appearance. When rehearsals resume, Edward is dealt a devastating blow. His role has been reassigned to Oswald. Ingrid explains that the play has been reimagined with Oswald at its center. To fit him in, she even created a charming lead character, since Oswald insisted on it. The realization stings, but what cuts even deeper is how much Ingrid seems to know about Oswald's personal life. Edward's protests are met with Ingrid's unwavering stance. It doesn't matter if Oswald's transformation seems unlikely, because in the heroine's eyes, love makes it real. That evening, when Edward asks Ingrid to meet him, she refuses, pushing him further into despair. The play premieres, achieving great success, and Oswald is met with widespread acclaim. Edward watches as Ingrid grows closer to him, while Oswald enjoys newfound fame, with glowing press coverage praising his performance. One day, Ingrid delivers a final blow. She tells Edward she must distance herself. His emotions unravel, and he becomes fixated on Oswald, following him and seeing him with a woman and child. Later, he confronts Ingrid, suggesting that Oswald may not be as trustworthy as she believes. However, Ingrid remains confident. She already knows about Oswald's daughter and his strong bond with his late wife. She disregards Edward's concerns. The breaking point comes when Edward learns that Oswald is moving into his old apartment. Overcome with frustration, he damages the freshly repaired ceiling. That night, his mind floods with memories, forcing him to relive his past. By morning, Edward puts on his usual composed expression, greeting potential buyers as if nothing has changed. But at work, his unpredictable behavior unsettles his colleagues, leading to his dismissal. That evening, he storms into the theater and disrupts a performance by confronting Oswald. During the struggle, part of the set collapses, leaving Edward seriously injured. During his recovery, Edward moves back into his old apartment, now right next to Ingrid and Oswald, who are preparing a film adaptation of the play. Edward remains detached, barely reacting as he watches Oswald thrive, playing the saxophone, staying active, and sharing joyful moments with Ingrid, who is now expecting a child. One day, Edward's therapist makes an offhand comment about Oswald. This triggers Edward's frustration, leading to an altercation that results in serious consequences for him. Years later, Edward crosses paths with Ingrid and Oswald once more. The play remains successful on Broadway, though Oswald has retired and the film adaptation was never made, much to Ingrid's relief. The couple is content, preparing to move to Canada to join an artist community, their children now grown. As they sit together, a waiter arrives to take their order. Edward hesitates, unable to decide. With an easy smile, Oswald orders for him, playfully remarking that some things never change. And with that, the story reaches its end.